Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, we will start our program very soon. Just a gentle reminder to avoid interruptions, please keep your microphone muted throughout the session. And if you have any questions for our guest today, kindly drop your questions at the chat box or during our question and answer session towards the end of the program. Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Greetings to Associate Professor Dr. Badri Najib Zubir, Dean of IIUM Academy, Datuk Nik Muhammad Hasyuddin Yusof, our Honourable Guest Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, our respected audience, brothers and sisters. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning to all. Welcome to Baseerah Talk Series, a program organized by IIUM Academy of Graduate and Professional Studies. My name is Naima from IIUM Academy Events. It's a great honor to conduct our session today with all participants in this Zoom meeting, and we are also streaming live on YouTube. So welcome to all joiners on our IIUM Academy YouTube channel. Today is the second session of Baseerah Talk Series. We had the first one last March with Mr. Wan Abdul Rahim from PNB Berhad on the basics of sukuk that practitioners should know, and it is up on our YouTube channel if you would like to watch it later. In this monthly program, we'll dive deep into the minds of professionals and experts from the industry, where our invited guests are prominent speakers who will deliver topics related to their fields. So by joining this program, you will be exposed to the experience and knowledge of industrial key players. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook as we are going to make an announcement on our social media platforms for the upcoming Baseerah Talk series. For our talk today, we are delighted to present you Datuk Nik Muhammad Hasyuddin, Non-Executive Non-Independent Director of Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad, who will speak on governance. Thank you for being with us today, Datuk. If I can address our participants today, some are managers, directors, CEOs, students, teachers, lecturers, officers, business owners, and more. I am pretty sure that most of you here are very well versed how corporate governance works, but there is always more to it, which is beyond the theory. So that is what our speaker will be sharing today. To introduce him, I have the pleasure to invite IIUM Academy Dean, Associate Professor Dr. Badri Najib Zubair. Please welcome, Doctor.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning to all. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we are in the second session of our Baseerah Talk Series. And Baseerah is a word in Arabic that means insight or clarity in following the true path or following the correct way of doing things. So this is what we would like to have in terms of our business operations and also in terms of our governance and also our administration. That's why we have called this series Baseerah Talk Series. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to all the viewers of our speaker for today's session, Datuk Nik Muhammad Hasyuddin Yusof. So Datuk Nik Muhammad Hasyuddin holds an MBA from Curtin University of Technology, Australia. And by profession, as many of you would know, he is a chartered accountant and is a fellow of Certified Practicing Accountants, CPA Australia, and of course, a member of the Malaysian Institute of Accountants. He is no stranger to IIUM with his involvement previously as an adjunct professor of IIUM's Department of Accounting. And he has over 30 years of experience in the corporate world, serving, among others, the Securities Commission of Malaysia, Bank Islam, and also he had a stint at Tabung Haji when he was appointed as the Group Managing Director and CEO of Tabung Haji from 1st September 2019 to 4th May 2021. He's currently, as mentioned by the MC just now, on the board of directors of Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad and several other companies, including recently Petron Malaysia. With him being able to participate in our series, we are very, very honored indeed. And without further ado, I would like to pass the screen now to Datuk Nik Muhammad Hasyuddin to deliver his talk. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Badri, for your kind introduction. It is an honor for me to share my thoughts and views on the topic this morning. And listening to your explanation on the word Baseerah makes me a bit cold in my feet, because it is a very big meaning indeed. And hopefully I would be able to do justice to this program, sharing my experience and thoughts on the topic of governance. And as what was mentioned, I had the opportunity of serving a number of organizations. I was the president of the Malaysian Institute of Accountants. And before that, I had my own accounting firm. I've left the firm, I think in the mid-2000, but my name is still there. Then I was also involved with the capital market. I was initially appointed as the executive chairman of the Audit Oversight Board to regulate auditors of public interest entities. And then I was the executive director responsible for the supervision of the capital market. So this topic of governance is very close to myself, and of course my last stint was in Tabung Haji, and that is, I think, the most exciting and very memorable experience. And so my presentation today, I think, is more of sharing of my thoughts and insight, and I'll be sharing with you some thoughts of mine which, from the academic perspective, may have not been validated. So I'm open for challenge. So during the question and answer, I would really like to take on questions from you, because I think it is very important for this kind of topic to be debated. And I also hope that you would also be able to share some of your thought on this topic. So let me share the screen first. Okay. The topic today is about governance, and I'm trying to stretch it beyond just the theoretical part of it, because this is, I think, one of the most researched area, because governance encompasses a wide range of area, not just in the corporate sector, but includes public governance, and I think this is also one of the area that requires a discussion. But while I'll be basically using the concepts more more pervasive in the corporate sector, but certainly we can also discuss the one that is relevant to the public sector as well. So just to start the conversation, our Code of Corporate Governance in Malaysia was just refreshed in 2021. But I noted that the definition of corporate governance has not changed. And for those who are not familiar with this, the first version of Code on Corporate Governance was introduced in year 2000. Before that, in 1997, 1998, Malaysia went through a very nasty experience. We had to face the ASEAN financial crisis, and this is when our capital market got hit heavily, and the index went down, and a lot of people got into trouble. Those who invested in capital market got their hands burned, and those who own companies, those who borrowed money, end up being exposed to bankrupt. And the government had to introduce structures like Dana Harta to restructure the capital, to restructure the companies affected. Dana Modal was introduced to recapitalize the bank, and I think that situation opened the eyes of regulators as well as government about the importance of governance. And you might be wondering, we have all sort of laws in the country. In the capital market, you have the Capital Market Services Act. You have the Financial Services Act, which regulate the financial services industry, you know, and we have a lot of law. But why we still talk about governance when you have all these laws? Because to put it simply, law to me is just like, you know, if you are a driver, when you drive a car, law is about, you know, telling you, you know, you have to drive on the right side of the road, you know, within the defined speed limit, and, you know, and all sort of thing that you are supposed to do to be a good driver. But it does not mean that everybody will be a good driver just because there is a law. So you become a good driver when you believe that you must be a good driver, you must observe, you know, what all the instruction or all the expectation that to make sure that there will be no accident. And a simple example to show that when this rule of law is not observed is when you have electricity failure and the traffic lights are not working. Then you can start to see people trying to basically, you know, push their way through, try to, you know, make turn from left to right, and that will be chaotic. So the law is there to provide the rule of the game, but eventually the person is important in ensuring that, you know, rules are observed, the principles of the rule are observed, and hopefully things are you know, are run properly. And this is why when you look at the definition of corporate governance, which is on the screen, one of the issue that I have with this definition is it lacks emphasis on the people that are supposed to apply and implement the code. You know, it talks about process and structure used to direct and manage businesses so that the company will achieve the business objective, as well as taking into account the interests of other stakeholders. So the focus has always been on the process and structure, but to me, the most important aspect of governance, whether it's corporate or public, is the people who are given the responsibilities to manage, to govern, to lead those companies or even institutions. So I think the lack of emphasis of on the people makes it, you know, to be something that is more nice to have, but not really implemented so that the objectives are achieved. And that's the reason why you have regulators who have to continue to push this agenda so that it becomes part of our culture. And I think I will also be mentioning about the role of culture. And normally that is the most important part of governance. If the culture is not conducive, if the mainstream thinking is not to respect principle, rule of law, then it will be very challenging for good governance to prevail. So I think while we need something like this, you need a code on corporate governance so that people who are participating in the marketplace understand their role. But I think the emphasis on people is something that to me should be incorporated in the definition, so that we understand the role that they are playing to make sure the objective of having good corporate governance to be achieved. And just you know, to deal a bit with the code of corporate governance that was refreshed last year. I think it's premised on three major principles. One is board leadership and effectiveness. Second is about effective audit and risk management. And third is about integrity in corporate reporting and relationship with stakeholders. So when you start to look into the principle, then you start to see the human element starting to become important. Because when you talk about board leadership, that is, you know, board of directors or any other term that refers to similar position refers to a group of people working together towards achieving the mission and vision of the organization. So then you can start to see that, people are important when it comes to governance. And when you talk about effectiveness, it's about how this group of people working together and ensuring that whatever that they decide and do help the organization to achieve the mission and vision. So when you look at the principle of the code that had been established in Malaysia, then you start to see the role of human in ensuring governance. So, and because from experience, I have observed that people tend to look at the structure and process and forgot about the importance of people, or sometimes this is not, you have the wrong people being appointed or placed in the right position. So you don't have good governance in that situation as well. So beyond board leadership, beyond board being effective, then the other thing has to be effective as well. So the code emphasizes a lot on audit because this is where the activities of the companies which will be reported need to generate credible information for the stakeholders to use in making their decision. So that's why audit is important. And risk management is something that is also critical, because risk is always about looking forward, understanding the marketplace, understanding the business landscape, identifying opportunities as well as what could go wrong. So that's why risk management is important, and I'll be discussing a bit about this later as well. And of course, the third part is about integrity in corporate reporting and relationship with stakeholders. So when you look at the other element, audit, risk management, reporting, relationship, it's all about activities that are performed by humans. So again, I would like to emphasize that while you have this principle being discussed, the underlying relationship between all the three of them is about having the right people being placed at the right position and able and having the courage to do what is right. I'll deliberate more about that later. And for the code to be understood and implemented, all these people who are involved must understand the spirit and intention of all the codes and principle and practice. And this is, to me, where we are starting to have problem. Because if you look at governance as merely process and then a structure and process, then you will miss the part about the principle, why you have a recommendation or practices that are required under the code. So understanding of principle, understanding of philosophy, I think is very important. Because if you do not understand that, you may not be able to apply the code effectively. And there could be situation where the issues that you are dealing with may not even be prescribed in any of the code and principle. And if you don't have a clear true north, then you will be going everywhere. So not only you need to comprehend, understand, and apply. And this is where, to me, in practice, you have challenges in terms of the application of the principle, because some of the outcome of the application may not necessarily be something that everybody will be happy about. For example, if you are an accountant and you want to make sure accounting standards are observed, but because of the observation of the standard, the profit of the company may not be as what the directors expect, or even the market expect, and that will be something which may result in a pushback from some parts of the organization, and I think this is something that requires somebody who has the courage and be willing to deal with the consequences of that courage. as I mentioned, it also talks about having the right culture, because there could be such a culture where people don't care about what is right and what is wrong, as long as they get the results that they want. So application is not as simple as what it is being written here. You have a lot of challenge around it, and of course, once you understand, you apply, then you have to report. And this is also where principle matters, because sometimes if you want to be fair to the readers of your report, whether it's an internal stakeholder or external stakeholder, you may be revealing things that may not be comfortable for you or the organization. And I think this is something which causes people to have challenge in terms of applying the code. All right. So what is my take on governance? So this is my this is how I basically put things together in terms of what does it take to run a business or to run an organization. It has a number of components. First, I think if you look at the red box, it talks about management. And this is where people strategize about the organization, market their product, nurture the people, putting in place system processes, finance, making sure the finance function is operating, and ensuring compliance of rules and regulation. So that is where I think in some document they may be referring to business governance, and then on the other side, in the red boxes, that's where I listed down elements of governance which to me is very important. The first thing about governance is about stewardship, and this concept of stewardship to me is very, very important, because when you are in a governance position, it's not about you, it's about the organization which you are responsible for. And I think in the Islamic tradition, I think there's a lot of emphasis on stewardship, about being responsible for what you are given to manage. And I think this is where people either they got the idea or they will they miss it, because being a steward means you are taking care of somebody else's interest first instead of yours, and putting the interest of the company, the interest of the shareholders, and now the interest of the stakeholders beyond your personal interest. So and this is normally where you have challenges in terms of governance, and if people miss out this point, then the rest I think will be problematic. I still have rule and structure as mentioned earlier, and I'll give you some example later. And risk management, I think this is very important. If you talk about running of business and institution, if you do not understand the risk, then you may not be a good manager. Even for non-profit institution like Tabung Haji, it is full of risk, and the risk is, the risk of Tabung Haji, I think, is more than the risk of any business, because Tabung Haji has multiple dimension. It has the business dimension, it has the religious dimension, and it has a very big political dimension. So if you do not understand what risk that the organization has to deal with, then you may not be able to govern the institution properly. Internal control, I think, is given. It's about ensuring your asset, your resources, your power are used within the mandate that you got. And of course, you need assurance, and this is where internal and external audit will be important. And finally, to me, culture, as I mentioned earlier, is very, very important, because the culture will shape how people behave in organization. I mean, I'm not going to make this a very confusing thing. To me, culture, to make it simply, is how people behave in or how decision is made in the organization. Because when you want to make decision, there will be always dilemma between the options that you are going to choose. And this is where, if you're persuaded by a certain way of thinking, a certain way of behavior, then you may not be making the right decision. And to connect between governance and management, you have leadership. And well, I still believe that a leader must be competent, but the most important part, it must have the right conscience. And I think this is where the failure or the lack of conscience may result in a lot of disasters, and we have seen that overseas as well as in the country. I put courage there as another factor of leadership, because courage is about doing what you believe is right. Because many people know what is the right thing to do, they know what is right and what is wrong, but whether you are courageous enough to do what is right and make people who are influential, people who have power over you, not happy with your decision, and you personally may suffer the effect of that. And I think from my understanding, after the 2018 general election, when the government then established the Council of Eminent Person, one of the findings from their observation and investigation on a number of issues was the lack of courage by people who are given responsibility to do what was right when they had the opportunity to do it. I think if you look at, this is public information, if you look at 1MDB or even the trial of SRC, you have a number of people making a statement in court to say that they were told to do or they were asked to do, but nobody basically stood, or not many stood and decided to do anything that which was against what was right. So I would say that when we talk about the practice of governance, when we talk about effectiveness of governance, courage is one of the important factor. And of course, being a leader, you must have power, whether power through the instruments that appoint you, or the way you are able to influence your stakeholders. And you must be able to communicate, and you must be able to instill trust. You may be wondering why for every segment there are 6 components. Well, that was my choice. That's why I said this model is not validated academically, so I am open for challenge. But at least I believe that some of the points that I have included here are important when it comes to putting everything across. But when you run organization, you have to also be mindful of the stakeholders, because it's not just about the organization, but you are in a wider ecosystem where there are people who are related to your organization, whether as suppliers, whether as customers, whether as regulators. And I think we have observed for the past maybe 3-4 years how politics can also shape behaviors, not just organization, but the society as well. So being stakeholder centric to me is also important. And now when we talk about climate change, ESG, environment, social and governance, these are all people who may be outside of organization rather than those who are inside. So being aware about stakeholder and how they will be impacting you is also an element of governance. And I think you will be able to recall that there was at one stage where government decided that, okay, they want to make sure that all institutions owned or influenced by the government are run by professionals. And then you have a new version or the old version coming back saying that, no, it's okay to place political appointees in those positions with the justification that they will be representing the wish of the rakyat. So that there are concept and idea which may be good or bad for government, but they come from the stakeholder rather than from the organization itself. And this is where the board is responsible to set the tone and ensure that they can work with management with the proper division of responsibilities and based on the delegation of power made by the board. So when you talk about governance, is a mixture of many things about managing, is about governing, is about leading, and it's about dealing with your stakeholders. So it is not a simple topic, and that's why it is sometimes challenging when you run a huge institution with a lot of public interest. Just to give you an example, when I was in Securities Commission, I was involved with a lot of policy decision. All right, but given that the Securities Commission only regulate the capital market, generally, listed companies as well as certain unlisted organizations. Whatever policy, whatever statement that were made by Securities Commission, it doesn't really attract huge public response. But when I was in Tabung Haji, and a simple reconfiguration of your website, for example, can cause a lot of noise from everywhere, because there's a lot of people who are interested with Tabung Haji, whether for the right reason or for the wrong reason. But that shows that stakeholders do influence how institutions or businesses are being run. And if you are a business where you have huge stakeholding, a huge number of stakeholders like tenaga, like the airline business, then you will have to deal with all this, and not necessarily everybody understand what they want. They may be very noisy, but sometimes they may be advocating for something that from the organizational perspective can be detrimental, but from a political or from the public interest perspective, can be something that is popular. So how do you deal with that will influence your decision. So just to share with you how board normally organize themselves in terms of structure, because remember there were 3 issues that was considered by the Securities Commission as the principle in the corporate governance about board effectiveness and leadership, and in implementing that, you have to structure yourself properly. So normally now you will have a nomination and remuneration committee that looks at the remuneration of the board, remuneration of senior management, and now I think the discussion is beyond that. We start to look at succession planning. We start to look at how do you incentivize senior management, whether there's a conflict between what they are doing and the risk that the company is taking. So that's one group of people. And then you have your traditional audit committee that looks at internal control, looks at financial reporting, looks at internal audit, looks at perhaps so you have that. And then in between, this is something that was advocated in the earlier version of the Code of Corporate Governance in Malaysia, is about risk, because business in particular is about risk taking. And if you are not, you don't have the structure or the framework in dealing with risk, then you may get surprises that you have not imagined, and it may cause the institution or the company to have difficulties in many aspects. So now risk management is a very big subject, and it's getting more important, because now we are talking about climate change, for example. And climate change is something that is coming. I believe it is already here, because I have a small farm in Batang Kali, and there's a river flowing beside my farm, and I bought it not that long ago in 2019. But recently, within a space of three months, it got flooded. One after a very prolonged raining period, which was December 2021, which everybody knew. But recently there was a flood that came out of nowhere. So and the water quality has changed a lot. You used to be clear, now it's less clear, and the river is connected to Genting, and we were told that there's a lot of development activities happening in Genting. So from that perspective, even a small nobody like me is experiencing climate change. So what more when things become more pervasive, when the water level continue to raise, what will happen to the low lying places. So there's a lot of assets that are exposed to that, and how do we basically manage that? And I'm telling you, from a director of a bank, this will be a factor that will be used in credit evaluation moving forward. So if you are an entity that is not climate friendly, you basically cause climate to be you are not putting in place good practices in managing this climate issue, then your credit scoring will go down. I'm not saying that you may not get credit, but there will be a factor that will be assessed on that part. And I think as we move forward, this issue will become more and more pervasive. And then, and of course, the board itself has other responsibilities, like looking at the purpose, the values, risk appetite, looking at the strategy part, looking at the capital structure, looking at the key people, looking at performance target, human potential. So and for all this role to be implemented effectively, you need good people to be placed in all these positions, and that's why, going back to my point earlier, having the right people with the right knowledge base, with the right skills and right values is important. That's why you have debate about whether politicians should be appointed on board of directors of public institutions, for example, because in Malaysia, there's no rule about who can become politician. As long as you are popular, as long as you are able to garner votes, then you become a politician. You may be elected to parliament, you may become a minister, or you may become somebody that is very influential. So would that be a merit for you to be on the board? So that is the debate, and although some party have make it an outright prohibition, I still feel that there's a room for debate, because I also know good politicians. So how do we deal with this kind of topic? All right, and I think so how do you get people to be in the right place, in the right position, becomes important, because otherwise, the whole idea about managing, governing, and leading may not happen as what we expect. And I think when we look at the pool of talent who are considered appropriate and eligible, I think if you look at, sometimes you can start to see a similar name being repeated in many institutions. So that is also a concern on whether we have enough people who are considered achieving the right level or the right competency and skill, as well as having the right values to become directors of listed companies, for example. So these are issues which I think is felt and experienced by most organizations. And while, and even after you are there, given the dynamic of business, everybody has to be able to learn new things very fast. And my own experience, I joined Tabung Haji in 2019, of course, in September. So that was enough for me to plan for, certain things to be achieved in subsequent years. And then by January or by February 2020, we already had COVID. And first time in the history of the world, the whole world was shut down. So you just imagine you are running an institution with a lot of market exposure, and suddenly the market was not able to function because of something that nobody has ever experienced before. So if you are not agile in dealing with issues and challenges, You are not agile in reshaping your strategy. You're not agile in developing new model of operation. Then you'll get stuck as well. So not only you must identify people who are competent, who are skillful, who have the right values, but you have to continue to ensure that these people do not just stay at one place. They have to continue to add new knowledge, develop new skill, and be able to steer organization in a very which are run in a very complex world. So next one, I think, is just about the balance between board and management. And I think this is very important because you have many style of relationship between board and management. There could be board which are very dominating and wanting to get things done their way, while most of the board members are not full-time. They just come for meeting maybe 4 times a year or maybe more than that, but they want things done their way, as opposed to management who are dealing with the issues day in and day out and have a better understanding of things. So how do board and management interact with each other, I think is very, very important. And the board member must, to me, try to understand not just the organization, but its culture, what are the key pain points in the organization, what is the culture of the organization, and how they can contribute and help to set or to deal with those issues. So I just give you an example. Here, when we look at financial reporting, naturally it will be under the responsibility of audit committee. So here, there must be a clear demarcation between the role of management and the role of audit committee member. And being a board member, you must understand that you are not, especially if you are not an executive director, you are not supposed to do the work of management. And that's the reason why you must, as a board, facilitate management to appoint the right people in the right position, so that they know what to do and they are able to do their job properly. So in this particular situation, you can see that when it comes to policy, for example, policy is set by the board and applied by management. Notwithstanding that, in the real world, the management will be proposing to the board what policy to adopt, but the board must know enough and smart enough to be able to assess whether those policies are reasonable, based on the situation of the company, based on public expectation, based on rules and regulation. So that's where the division of responsibility will happen. So when it comes to internal control, the management is responsible to ensure control is implemented and effective, and the board has to assess, assisted by internal audit, assisted by external auditor, and if necessary, they can even invite other external consultant to help them to look at that. When it comes to financial statement, the management prepares, the board review, the board approves, engagement with auditors, 2 different roles as well. And there's a lot more than what I'm sharing with you here. But more importantly, when it comes to, for example, financial reporting, the tone set by the board is very important. If the board says that I want a very true and fair financial reporting, where what is reported really reflects the situation of the company, its financial performance, financial position, cash flow, based on credible information that is kept, then management will do that. But if the board or people in the board starts to have a different idea about what financial reporting is all about, you only report numbers or data or information that make your share price to go higher, and you try to downplay any negative information. So then management will get a wrong signal about that. So that is the reason why the board is very important in setting the tone and in ensuring that you must get the right people to be on the board. You know, if the criteria of election of people does not include integrity, for example, if you know then you know, the board may not appreciate that they have to report with full integrity. So I think so those are the issues that you know that will have to be faced in applying the code that we talked about earlier. This is about risk, and this is why you need to connect the business with risk management, because sometimes when people look at risk, they may not be able to understand how to start, how to connect the idea of risk management with the business that they are managing and governing. But here is, you know, it's connected with the strategy, it's connected with marketing, connected with people, process, finance, compliance, and any other matters that are important to the organization and stakeholder as well. So risk management stands side by side with internal control, because internal control is where you put in place the process, the system, to ensure that the risk is brought to a level where it's within the risk appetite of the organization, or if you are able to you know, transfer the risk or reduce it to a level where it's not going to cause harm in the bigger scale of thing, then I think that is an effective risk management. And of course, assurance has to come in play. And again, the culture is also important when we talk about risk management. I think you know, you have that classic story about somebody that is, you know, working as a, you know, sweeper in NASA, and when people ask him, what are you doing? I'm helping to send people to the moon. That shows a very classic example of people understanding the mission and vision of the organization and how to contribute, as well as how to deal with the risk that comes together with that. But while somehow culture is placed at the bottom, but I would like you to see that as being the foundation of risk management. I think if you have the right culture, then the chances are risk management will be very effective. Okay, apart from that, I have to touch about fraud in organization. And to be honest with you, fraud is something that is not difficult in terms of concept, you know. And I've been sharing this modus operandi in many forum, and I don't think people have challenged me on this. It's just about people trying to get the company to enter into transaction which will benefit parties that are involved with the fraud. In fact, if you look at this, and of course there will be the process of layering, you know, to basically in trying to distance themselves with the crime that they are committing, but eventually the money will go back to the mastermind of the fraud, or it will go into the account of somebody that will normally deal with the financial affairs of the person. In fact, if you understand this concept, you can even apply to 1MDB and see how things happen. But my point here is board will have also to deal with this. And when I look at the discussion about fraud, I think a lot of discussion are focusing on fraud. They are conducted by people lower down in the organization, talking about taking stock of the organization, you know. But as what we have seen in SRC and even 1MDB, you know, when the fraud is committed by people at the highest level or at the higher level, then you can see the extent of damage, which is tremendous. So while, you know, you can have system, process, and everything to control fraud, but I think the values that lie in the hearts and mind of directors and senior management are the most important deterrent about fraud. If they decided to to commit fraud, they can cooperate among themselves. There's no way the organization can be safe from that. So to me, this is something which is, I think, is getting more and more pervasive. If the culture in the society is such that people don't care about this kind of behavior, so don't be surprised it gets repeated from time to time. And we as rakyat, as a taxpayer, will have just to pick up the pieces and pay our taxes. So that's why I think it's very important. And from the capital market perspective, having fraudulent cases which affect the trust and confidence of the market is very bad. When I was in SC is a regulator. We meet regulators from all over the world in many situations. So when one MDB case started to become public, it was quite a difficult thing to go overseas and tell the world that you are supervising your capital market, because it's so obvious. But in certain situations, it becomes the elephant in the room instead of something that you yourself can see clearly. All right. So my second last slide. So I think when we talk about governance, there are a few points that I want to just recap and deal a bit more on them. First is the reasons to be in governance position. Why are you running an organization? Is it for your career development, or is it because you think that's the right thing to do, or is it something which you hesitantly accept because there are bigger reasons than yourself? Because to me, one of the shortcomings that can expose you to be breaching governance expectation is when you want the position. And this is applicable across, whether in public sector or private sector. If you really want the position, that makes you vulnerable, because people know that you want the position and they can manipulate you in many ways so that you remain in the position. Sometimes when you got one position, you want a higher position. And for you to go up further, then you have to behave accordingly for you to be given that position. So that is very dangerous, because as I told you, I said earlier about courage. Courage is about having that you are brave enough to do what is right. You may be wondering why I am saying that. Are you brave enough to do what is right? But remember, in a situation where the culture is so bad that people can get away with murder, for example, just an extreme example, then it's very difficult for those who want to do the right thing to do the right thing. And if you don't have the courage, then you will rationalize why you should follow the rest and live with whatever things that you don't agree, that are against your conscience, but because everybody wants to be safe, then things will continue to happen. So that's number one. And I think this is a very important factor when it comes to ensuring that people deliver what they are supposed to do. Number two is knowledge and competency. I think I really support the efforts of IIUM Academy in terms of providing opportunities for people to continue to add new knowledge, new competency, because the world is a very dynamic world now. Things can change very fast. While we were still dealing with COVID issues, nobody thought that, or maybe some people knew, but not many people thought that Russia will go and attack Ukraine. And because of that, there's a lot of disruption in terms of oil supply, and the price of commodities has gone up. It was bad before Ukraine and Russia went into war, but now it's worse. And you know, and if you are not prepared and you are not capable of dealing with this dynamics, then your organization will suffer. I think the third component is about values and belief. This is where, to me, you know, institutions like UIA has the advantage, because it's premised on the Islamic values that is supposed to save us not just in this world but in the hereafter. And I find it very enlightening when I was in Tabung Haji, because you know, it is an institution that are given two major Islamic responsibilities: to manage the wealth of the Muslim and to facilitate Muslim to complete their religion through the Hajj. It's so meaningful and powerful. Yet Tabung Haji at the same time administer around 80 billion worth of fund, invest in all sort of investment, whether through the portfolio investment as well as strategic investment, and because of that, you know, it faces a lot of pressure. But from a Muslim perspective, my thought was that if we are able to convince people in that situation to be a good Muslim, to understand that, you know, as a Muslim you have to manage organization responsibly, I think is a more easier approach than looking at corporate governance as what we talked before. So during town halls, for example, I reminded my people that in the day of judgment, whatever decision that we make here in Tabung Haji at that point of time will be scrutinized by God. And jokingly I say, oh, you know, the CEO will be called first. Then suddenly I saw my chairman. I said, oh, chairman will be called first before the CEO, and then only all of you will be called. Just to get people to understand that, look, you know, when you face God, that is not the time where you think about how to answer the question. You are basically providing the answer through your conduct and behavior. And if we can connect this, I think people will be more excited to perform their work well, to strategize, to, you know, to do whatever that is right in all the parts of the organization, because that is what you are going to bring back to God and serve Him, and be and to show that you have been a very faithful Muslim, you know. So that, to me, is the strength that we have in Islam. But we have not been using that from the governance perspective. And I believe there's a lot of opportunities for that. Next one is team dynamic. I think this may go back to the issue of culture as well, because if you are the lone person in the room trying to do what is right, and everybody else don't see that as important, then you have problems. So, and this is applicable not just at the board level, but at the management as well as at the working level. Business and social ecosystem. I think, as I mentioned, you know, the business environment is very dynamic. Social ecosystem includes politics, and I think in Malaysia, politics has a lot of influence. The challenge for us now is, you know, nobody has thought that for, you know, when you vote, you know, you only vote for once, but you get 3 prime ministers, you know. That kind of dynamism may not be good for the country as well, because you just imagine if you're a foreign investor trying to look at the Malaysian market and, you know, having to deal with 3 personalities over a period of 3 to 4 years. It's not good for long-term policy making. It's not good for long-term strategy. So I think that also can influence organization. When I was in Tabung Haji, I dealt with 2 ministers. I can compare and contrast the way they work. But I think as Malaysian, we have our 3rd government since GE13. And again, I think I have to highlight courage there as something that hopefully will be your takeaway from this conversation. Okay, finally, an attempt to frame governance in the context of Islam. Before I left, the board of Tabung Haji approved this stewardship framework, and this was also championed by Datuk Norina Tahir, our CFO at that point of time. She's also an accountant. She's also active in MIA and ACCA. So what we have done is basically to bring the modern concept of stewardship and blend that with the ideas of with the principle of Islam. So from the in terms of Tabung Haji, whatever that we do, it should achieve maqasid syariah, it should comply with syariah, and it has to be performed with high integrity. So that's the big, the outer layer of the stewardship framework. I mean, there's a debate whether that should be within or that should be outside of the circle, but I think we eventually agree to put it as the so-called outcome that you want from the stewardship framework. And of course, we still talk about effective leadership, like what Code of Corporate Governance espouses. We talk about internal control, we talk about accountability, but there's one component that is important. It's about Islamic values and principles, because that should cut across. And by the way, if you read this diagram, you should not read them separately. I mean, while Islamic value and principle is just a component of the diagram, it doesn't mean that it's only one quarter important. That is the overarching principle. So everything is anchored on that, you know. So I can assure you there was a lot of debate about this diagram, because when you want to put Islam, Sharia in a diagram, you have to do it with full responsibility. So so we hope that by having this framework, it will guide everyone in Tabung Haji in making decision, in looking at things in the future, and hopefully it will it will be one of the solution to make sure that Tabung Haji becomes a respected Islamic institution for the performance and governance. That was my so-called exit criteria when I joined Tabung Haji. People, I say that, you know, when I leave, I want Tabung Haji to be a respected Islamic institution for performance and governance. Why the word respect is there? Because respect is normally earned. You have to perform to earn respect. You don't force respect on people. So you have to do whatever that is right so that people start to respect you. And while performance, I think, is very broad, not limiting to financial performance. It includes effective Hajj operation and other part of services in Tabung Haji. But the other part, the governance part, you know, because normally governance is not associated with Islamic institutions. So I thought, why not, connect governance with Tabung Haji? And the inspiration was, one day when people ask anywhere around the world, where is there an institution that is well governed from the Islamic perspective? We hope that the Tabung Haji will be mentioned as the institution. So it was done 5 months before I left. So I hope the present management and subsequent management will continue to look at this framework as the way forward for Tabung Haji. So with that, I end my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions. So maybe I hand back this session to the moderator for the question and answer session.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ni, for all your sharing of knowledge and experience. We hope everyone has benefited from this talk. All joiners, we welcome your feedback for the improvement of our Baseerah Talk Series. Kindly refer to our chat box. There is a link to our evaluation form shared. And so we would really appreciate every single feedback from all of you. Now I would like to open the floor to question and answer session. For Zoom participants, please get ready. If you have any question, you may unmute your mic and ask directly to our speaker. As for joining us via YouTube, you may drop your question at the chat box and we'll read it during session. All right, if there is no questions from any participant from the Zoom meeting, I will continue with the questions that we received. Okay, Datuk, first question from Ahmad Hazmi. Selecting people who are courageous to do what is right. How to do that in terms of the recruitment and appointment process?
Well, honestly, I've not. I mean, while I was involved in some of the, especially at the more senior position recruitment, I think a lot of organizations are struggling on that because when you talk about values, it's not that easy for you to be able to assess the values of a person. Even if you get the right person, but over time the person can change as well. I know that, or I'm aware that there are attempts to use technology to assess people, but maybe instead of answering that question, maybe what I want to share is for you to have the courage and for you to be prepared to deal with the decisions that you make. I think you must also have that in mind when you build your career. For example, if you want to buy a house or you buy a car, when you do that, you are committing yourself to a very long-term commitment, financial commitment. And sometimes when you have to make certain decisions which may even affect your position in the institution or in the company, that commitment may come to your mind, and that can also be a factor that may not be helpful in terms of doing what is right. So I think that is the so you have to be prepared for all eventualities. Not to say that you cannot buy house and cars and all the other things that you want, but have that in mind because there could be a situation depending on positions that you have where your call, which is what you think is right, what you believe is right, may result in you losing your position. So that kind of mindset, I think, is important, because then you are always conscious about the impact of your behavior into your ability to make that judgment call when it is necessary. I think there's one question here about remuneration of board members. I'm not sure about where is the angle of the question, but I think in principle it's about rewarding the work of the board member, but not to the level where board members becomes dependent, because this is also another challenge. That's why I raised the issue about why are you being in the in the governance position, because you have, for example, a situation where you are appointed as an independent director. All right, you are supposed to make your decision independently, based on what is right, but because you may be paid high board remuneration, and then you start to feel that if I were to become too strong in terms of my thinking, if I'm too different from other board members, they may not be happy, the shareholder may not be happy, and I may lose the job. Then you are no longer an independent director, you are now becoming a dependent director. So that's if the question is referring to remuneration paid to an executive director, I think that's one topic that is quite hot out there. I would say that is the issue where the number one, the independent director should have have a view on that. And number two, in remuneration of directors are approved by shareholders. So so these two parties cannot escape from being responsible for that sort of situation. So that's my comment on that. And there's a question from Muhammad Aidil about what are the elements that are associated with effectiveness of internal audit in corporate governance. I think number one, you must have the right people into those positions, because because internal audit is just a function, but if you are auditing a bank, it's different from auditing an airline business or auditing other companies in other industries. So while the skill set, the basic skill set may be the same, but experience matters as well. So I think number one is about having the right person. And nowadays, I think because of the way business are run are very complex, so they must be given the tool as well. So now you need system, IT system, and all sort of other tools to enable that. And of course, I think the other part is the support from board and audit committee to the internal audit department, so that they become, they are not, they don't have problem in discharging their responsibility. So I think those are the three things that will help internal audit to work, but I'm sure there will be other element as well. In bank, for example, these are considered independent units. Therefore, when it comes to bonus, the way they are paid bonus is different compared to those who are in business development, marketing, and so sometimes how do you basically retain good internal audit people when the remuneration structure is slightly different? So these are things that that has to be taken into consideration, especially when you want to make sure that you have the right talent and that talent is retained in your organization.
All right, thank you, Dato. There's another question that we received from Mr. Wajdi Hussein. Says, in UK, Social Security is in place and is considered an important institution in its democracy. With Social Security, people can get sacked for being brave to tell the truth, and they don't have to worry about having no food on the table. But it is very taxing to the state. What would be a viable alternative?
Well, I think in that context, I think social security in the context of Western society, because I was educated in Australia, so maybe I think it's to give that basic, to enable the citizen to be able to live, even when you don't have job. But it's not in the context of ensuring good governance. I think that is a different debate, because like what I discussed earlier, if, for example, you are the odd one deciding to do what is right in one organization and you lose a work, what happened to you? Who saves you? Or so while we have this whistleblowing law that says whistleblower cannot be action cannot be taken against whistleblower or not. But if you are the only one, I don't think you can even survive in the organization. So this is something which is even debated in the accounting profession, because in the accounting profession, there is this expectation that accountant must stand up when it comes to breaches of the law, breaches of governance, and because of that, there is a risk that the person will be taken actions against him or her, but what will happen to the person, I think is still being debated. But to me, it goes back to the society. If we are a society that values people who do their work honestly, who perform their duties according to what they're supposed to do, then perhaps the solution has to come from the society as well, in terms of perhaps law and things that are more supportive. But I don't think it's easy, and this is something which I think there's a lot of debate around it.
All right. Just now I saw like somebody from our Zoom meeting wants to ask question. If there is any, you may
Tadi
unmute your
nampak
mic.
Azam ada on dia punya video.
Assalamualaikum, Datuk.
Salam warahmatullahi.
Yeah, I was about to ask that, but you mentioned something. Coming back to what you mentioned about courage and then team dynamics, I also remember reading your social media yesterday. You ada mention pasal power distance. So the society that we live in memang ada all this kind of element kan, and how can we develop further, nak build courage tu. Cakap senang, kita nak cakap about courage senang, but how are we going to translate that operationally? And also memang second point related to what you mentioned about whistleblowing ni, apa kita kata, if all else fails, then internal reporting kita dah cuba, internal hotline kita dah cuba, then what is it you think needed to be improved? Sebab the whistleblowing, I think the report to MACC kata it's not, the numbers is not encouraging, people are not reporting kan. Apa lagi yang kita perlukan untuk improve the current governance ni? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Azam. Okay, what I have encouraged people who work for me before is, because to me it's very simple. I mean, not as simple as what I say It's about them becoming a top performer. Maknanya if you are good in one area, the thinking is, okay, if you are good in, katalah, I mean, you are good in that, so there will be a demand for you elsewhere. All right. So in a situation where you are challenged because of doing what you think is right, and you lose your job, I always tell them, if you do it because you are good, because you keep on performing, you are the best employee, apa benda semua, then if you lose one, I think there will be 3-4 other jobs waiting for you up there. So one of the way of preparing yourself to deal with this kind of issue is to be good, to be excellent. And I think this is very much what Islam is all about. And that's why one of my project in Tabung Haji is I have a simple project dengan Ustaz Fahrojo, is pekerjaan sebagai ibadah. I mean, you turn your work into submission to God. And because when you do submission to God, it must be an excellence work. And when you are excellent, you become good, and there'll be market demand for you. And because I'm sure you know, employers nowadays are always having problem of getting the good talent. So if you are good and you have to live for the right reason, I'm sure there'll be people waiting to take you on lah. So that's it. On whistleblowing, itulah, I think at the end it's about trust and confidence on the system. I think if the board and management really wants to do it, then it will work. But if management and board just want to have a system, that's why I tekan tadi, when we talk about corporate governance, it's not just about structure and process, it's about people. Because you can have the structure, you can have the process, but if the people doesn't want to make it work, it's not going to work. All right. So to me, it's all about demonstrating that you want it to work. But for you to want it to work, then people in the organization must have nothing to hide. Because if you got nothing to hide, you don't have problem people to blow whistle, trumpet or whatever, because there's nothing against you anyway. But if you have things to hide, then you are incentivized to make sure the whistleblowing is not going to work. So to me, it's still within that human factor lah. So thank you for your question lah. Ada satu soalan ni daripada Khairul Terengganu. Dia kata, what do you think of human resource? To me, okay, in tabung haji we call it human capital sebab I think human is more than resource lah. Resource is just like your table and chair, you know. I don't think we are that bad. So I think we have to respect human and focus on nurturing them so that they can become a better human being with the organization. I remember satu organisasi lah when I was an auditor. I attended one meeting with the executive chairman of the company with all the senior management, and this guy was angry he was upset for something, and he was telling everybody bodoh, and then suddenly he stopped. Ni tak kenal ni, I've not, your face is not familiar. Then the guy said, I just joined the organization. Tak apa, lepas ni jadi bodoh. I mean, what is the message? The message is, if you work for me, for in a short time you'll become stupid. I mean, and I don't think that is the right organization to work in the first place. And honestly, that organization eventually became a listed company, but now I think it's already delisted because they failed. So when you have that kind of leadership, when you have that kind of tone, people will not stand up, people will not be encouraged to develop themselves because there's no meaning to it. You are not appreciated, you are not respected by your own. So to me, the role of human resource department, whatever that you call it, is very critical because there are few things. One is to get the right people to come in. Then you have to bring them up to the level that you want. Then you have to retain them because a good employee will be also a good candidate for other people. So it's really a talent war out there. And then if you have limited resources in terms of paying for people, then you are already handicapped because of that. So I think it is very important. And but for public institution, that's one thing lah. Public institution, it's not easy to set people. But what they do, they will put you in a position where, you know, that is considered not important, where, you know, there's no more future for you in the organization. But to set people in public institution is very, very difficult. I experienced that, and that may be bad as well, because sometimes you don't want to keep people who are not contributing. But it is very important. Human capital, I think, is in fact, the whole presentation today is all about human. So if you don't nurture them, get them to be enlightened, to improve themselves, to acquire new knowledge, develop new skills, strengthen their values, then it's not going to be working from governance perspective.
All right, Datuk, we have a question from our YouTube viewer who would like you to explain on why you are a non-independent director. How are you linked to the organization?
Okay, ini Bank Islam ni, because I was appointed on Bank Islam in 2016 after I left Securities Commission. I think the first organization that wanted me to join there was Bank Islam. So I was there since 2016. But when I became Group Managing Director of Tabung Haji, then I have been redesignated as non-independent, non-executive. Then when I was asked to leave Tabung Haji, but I'm still on Bank Islam, so I am non-executive but not independent. So I think it will take another 3 years for me to become independent. But my mind has always been independent. So it's just because of my role in Tabung Haji for 20 months, then I became non-independent. So I think under Bank Negara governance, it will be the cooling off period is 3 years. So during that period, I will continue to be designated as non-independent. Okay, why that designation is important? If you are an independent director of a bank, you cannot be sacked unless Bank Negara allows you to be sacked. If you are a non-independent director, you can be sacked and Bank Negara will not do anything. So that's where the difference is. So that's why being designated as independent is very important, because you can only be appointed as a director of a bank with the approval of Bank Negara.
All right, thank you, Dato'. Another question from the same person. Is CSR considered good governance?
Well, I think to me, when you talk about CSR, and I think this is also where Muslim is not, we are not doing our part. Because if you look at maqasid syariah kan, ambil lah 5, kalau kata yang orang yang pegang 5 kan, I think that is all about humanity, kan, jaga harta nyawa, you have to take care of life, you have to take care, and to me that is very much SDG. Adalah, there could be some part of SDG that maybe we have to debate or realign, macam the LGBT and all those things, but it's only a small part. But the rest of SDG should be the principle of Islam, but we have not been advocating that, and I think this is the challenge for Muslims around the world, because the way people are looking at us is not from the perspective that we want to turn the world into a better place. We are maybe the part that always being highlighted on us is when we quarrel among ourselves, we quarrel with other people. So to me, this is an opportunity for Muslims to contribute to the well-being of the world. I give you an example. Bank Islam, we have a subsidiary, BIMB Investment, and BIMB Investment is a partner to a company called Arabesque. Arabesque is based in London, and it applies artificial intelligence in picking stocks which are ESG compliant. So the AI will scout the world. I think they have around 50,000 data point about any particular company. So what we have done is we combine ESG and Sharia, and Arabesque is managing one of the largest Sharia ESG fund in the world. All right. So it shows that, and when I spoke to the one of the owners of Arabesque, nama dia Omar, is a Muslim. It's quite interesting because when you just use the ESG filter, the return is kata X. If you just use Sharia filter, dia kata Y. But when you use ESG and Sharia together, it become X plus Y. So there is value in ESG, there is value in Sharia, and there's value in combining the two. So that is, and I think this is something where you have data and it can be analyzed to see whether there's connection between ESG and superior return of investment, and ESG plus Sharia, whether it provides much better return on investment. So to me, if you are an Islamic institution, you are supposed to live with that value. I give you an example. Bank Islam, I'm on the board of Bank Islam. We were not that strong in terms of SME financing before. Then we ask ourselves, okay, dah lah nama Bank Islam. I mean, you carry the name of Islam in your name. So your conduct and behavior must reflect the greatness of Islam. You cannot become the institution that make the name looks bad. So when we look at SME, if you look at what's happening now, the larger institutions are using a lot of technology to make themselves more efficient and more effective. All right, AI and all sort of things, robots. And what will happen is, because they have enough money to invest, the larger organization and institution will become more effective and efficient. So they will need less people to be employed. And honestly, organization, when it comes to people, most of them will like to have less people because so many issues. So, but at the same time, the number of people will continue to grow, especially in this country. So where will these people work? So my theory is they will work at the SME sector. So that's the reason why Bank Islam, in looking at its role as an Islamic bank, as a Muslim institution, you must be part of that, because you need to not only provide banking services, but you must facilitate people to grow their business and employ more people and provide halal working opportunities, not just for Muslim, but even for other part of the society. So once you look into that, then of course, then you say, okay, let's transform ourselves. How do we deal with SMEs? You know, we have to bring the right people, technology, so on and so forth. So by thinking like that, you are not just a more profitable organization, but you are also a contributor to the well-being of a nation. So to me, CSR should be the nucleus of business rather than an afterthought. You know, you mess up the environment, then you allocate some profit for donation and tawang umrah. I think that's not the right thing to do. Like, should be your DNA. You should be making money without messing up the environment, and that's where innovation should come in. So we need to be innovators as well.
All right, thank you, Dato'. Is there any other question from our Zoom participants? If there isn't any, then I would like to proceed with our last question received from Ms. Salwa Hadi on risk management. How to handle political risk in managing corporate organizations in Malaysia?
That's a very interesting question. Well, I'm not sure whether anybody can handle political risk. I mean, you can only project what politicians will do, and then perhaps try to anticipate decision points that you need to make should certain situation happen. And I don't think that's much different from any other risk that you're looking at, except for because political risks emanate from people, and people sometimes are not predictable, so it can be a bit more complicated. But I suppose if you look at multinational companies which operate over large number of countries, I think they have basically dealt with political risks before. I think in most cases they run their business by not being involved with the political issues of those countries, except I think if you observe in what happened since Russia invasion of Ukraine, American companies or European companies I think they have been asked to leave Russia. So that's something which maybe they have not thought before, because the scenario may be too remote for them to consider. But it's not something. I mean, it is complex, but there's a lot of organization that has dealt with that. So basically, like any other risk management, you try to anticipate, what could be the best case, the worst case, and if the worst case happen, what would be the decision points that you have to make, and what will be the consequences to your company, and then if you can mitigate that, that is something that you can think ahead rather than you wait for things to happen. So I think the whole idea about risk management is about thinking ahead, looking to the future, anticipate the worst, the best, and the possible scenarios, and then having in place action plans or the kind of response that you will make should any of those situations happen. I think that's my answer to that question.
All right, thank you so much, Dato', and thank you to everyone by coming with your questions. I believe that is all for now. We have to the end of our program today. On behalf of IIUM Academy, I would like to express our appreciation to Dato' Nik Muhammad Hasyiddin for your precious time and willingness to be our speaker today. Thank you, Dato'. And thank you to all joiners for your commitment and participation. We apologize for any shortcoming in handling this program. Inshallah, we'll meet again in the upcoming Baseerah Talk Series. Stay tuned with us as we will announce another renowned speaker in May. As for today's session, it will be up on our official YouTube channel for your future reference. So make sure to click subscribe now at IIUM Academy of Graduate and Professional Studies. Also hit the notification bell to not miss any new content, because we will also be announcing our upcoming programs via our social media platform. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at IIUM Academy of Graduate and Professional Studies. Looking forward to seeing you again, inshallah.